Hi everyone, really sad to be here, but I truly don't know what to do and I can't talk to anybody in my life about it at this stage. I'll give a lot of context, so I think it'll be a very long post, so sorry about that. Me 28 million and my wife 34F have been together for 7 years, lived together for 2, and have now been married for 20 days. I love her deeply, and we have a very beautiful relationship in which we've gone through wonderful times and experiences together, as well as very hard moments together, for each of us, like her mother's sickness, and passing near the end of last year, in which I supported her in every way I could, and my brother, who I lived with at the time, going through a heavy addiction problem which took a hard toll on me and my family, with her staying by my side every step of the way and supporting me even though she couldn't fully understand what we were going through. I can say with complete certainty that she is the best person I know, kind and caring, always looking out for others, always paying attention to detail and making sure the people she cares about are taken care of, be it our families, her friends, coworkers. She's always the one leading solidarity campaigns when people have health issues, organizing birthday parties, etc., you name it. She has 100% made me a better person since I've met her, and pushed me to be the best I can be in every aspect of my life. Before going to the suspicion part, I think an important piece of context is that we've had a rough year in the sexual aspect, due to me having an unplanned circumcision, due to a skin problem, which took an abnormal 3 months to fully recover, and then her having a recurring yeast infection for which she's still in treatment at the time and has tried a lot of different medication to cure. We've had sex in between her problem going away a few times, approved by her doctor. But I feel like she's uncomfortable about it and very frustrated about not being able to cure completely. So the frequency has gone to even less than once a month, which I've made clear to her that I'm fine with, since the most important part is her getting better and curing completely, as we also compensate a bit with adapted alternatives to regular sex. Now, I've always trusted her blindly, and she had never given me reason to suspect anything in the previous 6 years. But it's important to tell you there were 2 episodes previous to us getting married, both in the last year, that have been going through my head like crazy these past few weeks. The first was maybe more than 6 months ago when I was driving with her in the passenger seat, and she was really concentrated in her phone in a way that caught my attention. So I glanced at her screen a few times out of curiosity and saw some words that looked like a romantic conversation in her notes app. I really didn't know what to make of it, and it was driving me crazy. So I ended up looking at her phone that night when she was showering, specifically the notes app which I thought I saw earlier, and found what looked like a very hot and long text she had written to someone talking about the incredible sex they had, what she felt and liked about him, how she couldn't wait to be with him again, etc. It was a few paragraphs long, and I felt like dying while reading it, but still didn't know what it meant, and in the rush of things didn't think to check her texts to see if any of it was there. I ended up confronting her about it that night because I wouldn't get any sleep otherwise, which, from reading this subreddit, I gather was maybe not the best idea. And she basically told me that it was something very private, but just fiction she wrote on her notes app every now and then, and handed me her phone to read it all and check her texts or anything I wanted if I needed to make sure. She was very convincing, as she was reasonably mad about what I had done, not too over the top or making a huge scene, not having talked to her first about my worries, saying that she'd probably never feel comfortable writing anything private on her phone again out of distrust that I'd read it, and even said that she'd be gone in the morning. I apologized profusely, said I regretted what I did not talking to her first, tried to explain how I felt and what made me do it, and that it would never happen again. The next day she left and spent the day with friends, came back that evening, and it took us a few days to get back to normal. The second time was the day my closest friends threw me a bachelor party 2 months before the wedding. They wanted to keep it a secret, but she heard when one of them said they'd kidnap me and we'd go to a summer town which is an hour away from where we live on that specific date. So she guessed it was for the bachelor party. On that day, she offered to give me a ride there to pick me up, asked me to tell her if I needed anything, and let her know what we were up to generally since I'd be far away. The party itself was basically a pool party hanging out with some girl friends one of them brought over, I know, but nothing wrong happened. Drinking a lot, eating barbecue, and then at night coming back to our city to go to a nightclub. During the day, I wrote to my GF, now wife, about what we were generally doing like she asked. And when I got back to the city around 1 a.m., I told her we'd go clubbing, but I already wanted to go home since I was pretty drunk. And then I got home around 3 a.m., a bit worse than before, but still very conscious. My memory might be a bit foggy, but I remember opening the apartment door and she was in her PJs, I think, and greeted me kind of surprised. I looked at the kitchen counter next to the front door and I saw a pair of glasses that weren't mine or hers, grabbed them. And something propelled me to go and look in the bedroom, where I didn't find anything. Then came back with the glasses in hand and found a guy we both know but don't have any type of relationship with. Me and my wife are both volunteer firefighters. And this guy too in our same station, coming out of the bathroom fully clothed just to be clear, and with a deer-in-the-headlights look. I hand him the glasses and he leaves in a rush while she's trying to explain something about him getting robbed as the reason for him being there at 3 a.m., saying that her best friend, a guy I know and trust, although don't have a very close relationship with, let's call him Pedro, was there with them just until a few minutes before I arrived, but had to leave since he was traveling at that time. Even showing me a text she sent him saying, "Thank you for everything, have a nice trip, take care," just minutes before I got home. As I said, I was very drunk, mad at the situation, and just wanted the day to get over with, so I didn't insist much on explanations and just went to bed. The next day, more calm and very hungover, I asked her to please go over exactly what happened for that guy to be alone with her at that time in our apartment. And she explained. She was out to dinner and just driving around with her guy best friend Pedro until very late. And when he brought her home, they found this guy walking around dazed and confused near the apartment building. She recognized him and asked if he was okay, so he told her he just got robbed and beaten up. They took his phone, wallet, and keys to his car and home. He had blood on his shirt, she said, which I didn't remember. They drove him to the nearest police station, stayed with him as he filed the report, then took him back to our apartment building to wait for him to be able to reach someone to come pick him up. Pedro was with them a long time, then had to leave for travel a while before I got home. I asked her why he hid in the bathroom, why he left in a rush when I got home, and she said he probably just got scared because he didn't know me well and correctly assumed I would get mad. She again convinced me, and I calmed down and just went with it. Although remained with some questions in my head, I just kinda brushed off due to being drunk. Why was she in her PJs? Why didn't they just leave him at the police station to wait? Why did her friend leave her alone with some guy in her apartment building? Did she just say she was with Pedro because she knows I wouldn't ever fact-check with him? Was this why she wanted to know my every move that night? Could she really take the risk to cheat in our own apartment, and knowing I'd be back any moment? After that, I guess I just didn't want to insist too much on the topic, and it didn't even occur to me to check her phone again or doubt anything. Everything just went back to normal. I avoided thinking too much about it all. And we got married starting April in a beautiful wedding we'd been planning for half a year. We stayed at a hotel that night, and the next day came back to our apartment relatively early since we got alerted that someone broke into the building parking lot and robbed things out of a few parked cars, ours included. We went back to our apartment after checking the scene and filing our police report, where she noticed she didn't have her car keys and found out she'd left them at Pedro's car since he'd driven her to the wedding the day before. She went to her car to look for something, then came back to take a nap, saying she'd later have to go Pedro's house to get back her keys, visit his mom who couldn't be at our wedding, and also to pick up some gifts Pedro brought us from one of his travels abroad. While she was napping, I was doing the check-in for our flight and needed her passport info, so I remembered seeing the bag where she kept it in the car and went down to look for it. And while searching, I found the bag of gifts Pedro brought stored in the trunk, the ones she was going later to pick up. I knew for a fact they weren't there when we first got to the car, and just got chills down my spine thinking she'd lied about going there later for some reason. That afternoon, we went to our wedding planner's office with the replacement keys for the car since Pedro had the original ones, to pick up some things that were left over from the party, and I opened the trunk on purpose to store some things and see how she reacted to me seeing the bag. She had a lot of things in her hands to put away in the car, and I felt like she tried to hide the fact that she threw them all on top of the bag for me not to see it. We came back home and then she left to Pedro's with the car. I took an Uber to my mom's house, and she later met up with me there. She said she got her keys back and spoke about her conversation with Pedro's mom. And later, when we got home and I was unloading the things we picked up from our wedding planner, she told me to get out the bag of gifts Pedro brought from the trunk, as if she'd just picked them up. When I brought everything to our apartment, I asked her just to see what she said. Wasn't this bag already in the trunk when we left? And I felt gaslighted when she said no and successfully changed the subject. The next day, we went on our honeymoon, and I felt terrible the entire day. I doubted whether to go back to checking her cell phone, talk to her honestly, or what to do, and ended up telling her that night that I really regretted not having asked her first the last time I felt suspicious, and that I promised not to do it again. So I explained everything in detail from my perspective and asked her why she lied about going to pick up the gifts, that there must have been a good or simple reason, and I just needed her to tell me. She went on to say that maybe she got confused, that Pedro had gone to our apartment that previous afternoon and already given her the gifts, and she just didn't remember to tell me, which I now know doesn't make sense since she didn't get the keys from him then, or at least also hid them for some reason. I insisted on her please telling me the truth, and she insisted that it was, and I again just went with it. Some part of me maybe just wanted to have a nice honeymoon and not believe that my beautiful saint of a newlywed wife lied to me on our first day married. We did in fact have a nice honeymoon week, with no sex since she got her yeast infection back, but still had a very nice time, and I never thought about any of it again. Last week, already back home and to our everyday routines, one day she told me she'd go visit one of her girlfriends after work and bring her a gift she bought on our honeymoon. I got this weird feeling when I got home at 7 p.m. and I felt like she came back home just a bit too late around 9:30 p.m. The next day I took the car to work, and I found a small bag in the glove compartment with 2 pajamas of hers, and at the bottom of the bag was some lingerie that I'd never seen. In fact, she never wore lingerie with me. It made my blood boil at first, and then I started thinking what some reasonable explanations could be. I ended up convincing myself that maybe it was the bag she prepared for our wedding night, and it was always there, but I just didn't see it. And then she stored it in the glove compartment in order to not leave anything visible in the car when parking in the street. I didn't say anything to her, thinking I would either ruin a surprise or directly accuse her of something she could easily have an explanation for. Since this happened, I checked every day to see if she noticed she left that available there for me to find and maybe hid it back, and felt a bit relieved when she didn't, but still had this uncomfortable feeling of distrust and uncertainty. This seems to have sparked a growing paranoia in me, as I've been thinking about checking her phone again just to clear any doubts, and in doing so also noticed that she's acting really suspicious with it, always leaving it face down, taking it with her wherever she goes, even the bathroom, which she normally didn't do, not even leaving it accessible to me while charging in any moment. It's been getting worse, with me rethinking and replaying those previous scenarios in my head all the time, and finding the loopholes in the stories. For example, I found a tweet from the supposedly robbed guy that was posted the day after getting mugged. So maybe he still had a phone and the story wasn't true, not being able to sleep, trying to get a chance to snoop on her phone, and getting immensely frustrated when she obviously avoids leaving me alone near her phone. I feel this overwhelming sadness that comes from a suspicion that she may have cheated on me and could still be cheating. The impotence of not being able to prove it, since she's acting suspiciously wary of her phone. The duality of not wanting to confront her without proof and giving her the chance of gaslighting me. Or the fact that she could really not be cheating, and I could ruin the relationship and the trust at such an early stage in our marriage that's supposed to be the most beautiful one. I would love to get opinions on this if I'm overreacting, being stupid, if there's an obvious path of action that I'm not seeing anything. And either way, writing all this has been just a little bit cathartic, and I hope it'll let me sleep tonight while still thinking what I should do. TLDR, I've been married to my wife for less than 3 weeks and suspect she might be cheating or might have cheated before. There are previous situations that reinforce this doubt, and I can't prove anything now because she's acting very suspicious with her phone, and I don't have any other way of investigating. The simple fact that I'm having these doubts at this stage makes me unmeasurably sad, and I don't know what to do. I've just confronted her this morning and told her to let me look at her phone that instant, or I would take it as a fact that she's cheating, since I also tried yesterday and found that she'd changed her password I used to know. She resisted, of course, but understood from my tone that I was serious about it. I found nothing on her WhatsApp, which we use as main texting app where I'm from, or Instagram, but when I tried to open Telegram, the app itself was locked, and she reacted very shocked when I asked her to unlock it. She hid the screen from me and I could see a gesture of her deleting something, which I told her and she obviously denied. There was nothing on the main page, but I looked at her recent conversations and the guy she was with that night at 3 a.m. was on the list, as well as another guy she apparently holds regular conversations on there, which was first on the list. I bet the one she deleted. She took the phone from me like twice, and I told her this wasn't over, and she ended up giving it to me again. And when I was looking for conversation proof with Pedro, she acted outraged that I was looking at private conversations, and finally took it from me and left, even though I told her I would take this as confirmation that she was being unfaithful to me. I'm preparing my things to leave the apartment right now, and I know I won't have a chance to talk to her again until tonight since she's at a course teaching all day. I don't know how to feel, since I know what I saw is already enough to confirm my suspicions. But still guess, I expected to see something explicitly obvious and undeniable in order for her not to have a chance to deny anything or gaslight me, which she now does. We have a prenup, she insisted on, even though I make 4x her salary, which I kind of feel now was a sign of her not being completely committed to this, and live in a country, not US, where divorce or annulment is not so complicated, I think. So I wouldn't like to beat a dead horse and insist on getting much more proof, and sadly feel like she's not going to admit anything or tell me anything to at least give me some closure. I feel numb at this moment. I think I was sadder when I was thinking of the possibility, but now it's practically confirmed. I don't know how to feel or guess, it just hasn't kicked in yet. I assume the next step is to look into what it takes to annul or divorce, and make that the next conversation I have with her, leaving no room for anything else. I'm sorry for the anger I've caused some of you. Reflecting on this, I see how everything seemed so obvious, but I was truly and cornally blinded by love, and the complete trust that I really knew this person and that she wasn't capable of doing something like this to me, even less in the context of our engagement and the constant planning of our dream wedding for the past few months, which she seemed so excited about. I can't shake the feeling of having done something wrong or not having done something in our relationship for her to feel justified in doing this, but also know nothing justifies this. I've already booked a therapy session for myself next week, which I've never done before, and I guess I'll need it to process all that's happened and will keep happening. I may send another update for closure of this. Thank you all again, and hope this happens to none of you. Story 2. I do not understand why people cheat. What kind of beast are we that we will deliberately inflict the worst kind of pain on the person we swore to love, who has been there for us through everything, and made countless sacrifices for our well-being? In the process, we rob our loved one of dignity, pride, self-worth, and a host of other things that cannot be restored. My betrayal happened 25 years ago and completely broke me. I recently read a couple posts from guys whose betrayals happened years ago, too, which has inspired me to write, although advice, support, condemnation are really no longer pertinent. If you had asked me until the day, I would have stated that I had been born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Although I came from a fairly poor family, I had absolutely everything else because of my Katie. We were born in the same month, as first children to young parents who lived on the same street, only a couple blocks apart. So my Katie was in my life right from the start, and we became a thing without knowing it. We spent so much time together that it just seemed natural that she was at my place, or I was at hers. By the end of elementary school, a favorite activity of the boys and girls was to meet up somewhere before we went in for the night and steal a few kisses. It was never stated, but I didn't kiss the other girls, and she only kissed me. Our transition to high school began horribly for me. I have to add at this point that Katie was stunning, like upper first percentile gorgeous. I never saw her equal. All the boys noticed her. The unwritten rules of elementary school did not apply here, and soon all the boys in the school vied for her attention. They staked out her locker, jostled with one another to see her between classes and at lunch. We were always intercepted on the way to school by boys in cars. I was devastated. How could a grade 9 boy have any chance against bigger, stronger, richer boys who had cars and money? My love of school vanished. I became morose, didn't study, didn't walk her to school. In fact, I told my mom that I wanted to quit. Katie's mom saved the day by phoning my mom to ask if I was okay. I hadn't been over for a long time, and Katie was worried about what was going on. She invited me over next evening, and I and Katie sat down and talked. When I explained myself, Katie assured me that as far as she was concerned, I am, and always would be her boyfriend. My love of life returned. The unwanted attention of men, though, never went away. By the time grade 12 ended, I had given her a promissory ring which she had accepted. We had begun making decisions about our careers. She wanted to be a dental technician, and I had decided on a general year of arts and sciences at university. We remained in our parents' homes in order to save money, and due to an unexpected offer by her parents, this was fine with us both. A favorite activity of ours was to drive out into the country away from city lights. We would park our car, throw an unzipped sleeping bag across the hood and windshield, then a couple pillows for our heads. We covered up with a light blanket, then snuggled up as we watched the sky, talking, wishing upon the falling stars, etc. before moving to the back seat. We had been sexually active since the summer before. This time we fell asleep and didn't wake up before morning. Her parents were up making breakfast when we arrived, so I prepared myself for a scene. Instead, Katie's mom calmly asked us to sit down and have breakfast. I still waited for the shoe to drop. They asked where we had been, and I thought that at 19, I was old enough to tell them the truth, so it was time to man up. They both smiled, and her dad told us that their main concern was our safety, so instead of using the back seat, I would be welcome to sleep with her in her room. This was before cell phones, by the way, so parents did not know where their kids were and couldn't find out. Her mom told me that it had been clear for a long time that we loved one another and were inseparable. And her dad told me that he was proud that his daughter had found such a fine young man. Our sex was always fantastic. We spent hours discovering our bodies and how to pleasure one another. I was the king of the world. For brevity, I will speed things up, but I wish I could go on. The lengths I went to show her how much I loved her, and the thousands on wonderful things we did as a couple might make it easier for readers to relate to the completeness of my destruction when it came. She finished her course and quickly got a job. We took an apartment together after my 3rd year. I had made the decision, with her input, to go into teaching. I had the capability to do anything else, but teaching afforded us more time together. More time with her was something money could not buy. After my 4th year, I proposed, and we set a date for the early summer after I convocated. We stayed in our apartment for 1 more year, and in the year following, I had landed a job. We bought a house in which we planned to live forever. We planned on having children after I had been given a permanent contract. At 28, we began our family, welcoming our son, David. I was so proud of Katie and of David. I think I acted as if Katie were the first woman in the world to give birth. It was wonderful and terrifying. I had prepared for the birth, but the violence of it shocked me. I relied on the 2 mothers for advice, and the 3 women were constantly amused with my playing mother hen. What is she feeling? What does she need? What should I do? When can we have relations again? The birth brought me even closer to Katie. I had often heard that once born, children become the number 1 in their parents' eyes, supplanting their partners. Not me. Katie was a miracle, a wonder. She had always been my best friend, lover, soulmate, etc. Now she had become my soul itself. There simply was no me without her. Now sometimes, in the deadness inside my heart, I can almost conjure these feelings. I felt even greater pride when Hannah arrived after David, 3 years later to be exact. Katie's employers were very generous to their employees. Every 2nd year they would give the hygienists, technicians, receptionists, etc. a 5-day-long weekend. The girls would make all the plans, and the practice would pay all the costs. One year, once the kids were older, David 10, Hannah 7, I had made plans to take the kids somewhere special, instead of the usual trip to one or the other grandparents. Instead, we were going to a city far away with a famous mall that featured a huge water park, indoor amusements, submarine ride, and so on. Pretty exciting for all 3 of us. Once it was time, I drove my love to the airport where she was to meet up with the others, and we set off. I will just cut to the chase here. On the 2nd day, the kids and I were wading toward the wave pool when we saw something that stopped my heart. Outside the park, but on their way there, were Katie and someone I didn't know, walking hand in hand. In this place, countless people from everywhere go there, and as I stated up front, with her looks, anyone who had ever seen her would recognize her immediately. "There's Mommy," declared Hannah. The tears were already flowing when Davy asked, "Dad?" He wanted me to assure him, I guess. The cheating couple found a pair of reclining beach chairs and before sitting down, exchanged a long, passionate kiss, hands massaging the other's butts. Davy asked me again, "Dad," but I was just gasping and couldn't form sounds. As the cheaters separated and sat down, Hannah began running toward Katie, calling, "Mommy, Mommy." As she recognized Hannah, Katie was in full panic, scanning the crowd until she finally saw us. I began walking toward them, and she buried her face into the bath towels she had brought. I stopped in front of AP and asked Hannah to come to me. "So, asshole, I want to introduce you to the children whose family you just destroyed. I hope their faces haunt you for the rest of your miserable life." He met my words with a shit-eating grin long practiced, and went and sat a few chairs further away without uttering a sound. I told the kids to stay with their mom and hightailed it to our room. I changed as quickly as I could, leaving most of my stuff and all the kids. At reception, I explained that Katie would eventually want to know where I was and that it was okay to tell her I had left and to let her into the room to get the kids' things. I am not proud of this. but I figured that two kids might inject a little coitus interruptus into their plans. Then I began a very long and lonely 8-hour drive home, punctuated by many stops along the highway as my sobbing at times grew too intense for me to keep going. When I arrived at our house, I pulled the phone jack out of the wall. I sat down and wrote each of the kids a long letter which I placed onto their pillows. I took a hockey bag, stuffed it with random clothes and items I thought I'd need. I had had more romantic plans for the bathtub, but I ran a lot of water into it and poured the better part of 2 gallons of bleach in. Then, every wedding picture or photo of the two of us I could find, all the pre-children photo albums, and all the lingerie and other sexy things I had given her. Wedding certificate, too. Before I left, I laid out the house for the reception I had wanted to give her. The week before this, I had purchased 200 thick white candles of various heights and commissioned 2 of Katie's colleagues to get me the oils and lotions she might like. I laid out the candles beginning at the entrance like a little path leading to the bathroom. Candles crowded all the horizontal surfaces in the bathroom, and the bath oils and lotions were placed nearest to the tub. I had gotten 2 new large hotel-grade white bath towels that I placed on the toilet seat. On top of that was the lingerie and other sexy things I had bought for the night, except I cut them up. The kids were to stay with Grandpa and Grandma, and our neighbor and his wife were to light the candles after I phoned them from the airport. Our bedroom, too, was loaded with candles, and I folded over her side of the bed and tore off the petals of 24 roses to sprinkle onto the sheets. It was to be the homecoming of all time. I left my wedding ring on the kitchen table, scooped a few photos of the kids, and left forever. I was in no condition to see anyone, so I booked into a cheap motel to wait for Tuesday-long weekend, remember. I did phone my principal and explained that he needed to find a sub because I would not be in the near term. Tuesday morning, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer and gave him the terms. I would take out half the money in our checking or savings account, whichever was most, but relinquished claim to everything else. I asked for visiting rights during holiday periods. I would never see Katie face to face. All communication was through the lawyer, who was not allowed to disclose my whereabouts to anyone. I headed toward a part of the country where there was a housing boom to find some kind of basic job that paid the bills. I never even thought about teaching again. My lawyer did a beautiful job of keeping correspondence focused on business, and he never disclosed my whereabouts. He even controlled the exchange of children. I could go on, particularly how I handled things with the kids, my beloved in-laws, but I want to return to my first paragraph. Was the affair worth it? It destroyed me. Think of a light bulb with a burned-out element. My spirit, my love of life, of being me, burned away. Self-respect, confidence all extinguished, never to return. Now, so many years later, I still cannot trust women. I cannot make myself vulnerable. Guys try to set me up, but I always refuse. My libido did not survive the affair anyway. I was largely an absence in my kids' lives. 2 weeks in summer are not much. Was that worth it? Just a mistake. I feel like I can't answer anything anymore, but for God's sake, girls, think about what you are doing before you enter into your little fling. Does your husband or boyfriend deserve this?